Our story begins with Sakamoto, a deadly assassin who could probably take out an entire building before breakfast. Inside a crumbling structure, armed with a sword in one hand and a gun in the other, Sakamoto faces off against a group of assassins intent on taking him down. Bullets fly, but with pinpoint precision, Sakamoto deflects every shot with his sword like he's auditioning for the next big action movie. He takes down the first attacker with a clean slash, splattering blood onto the next unlucky guy, whom he promptly shoots. Two more come at him. He strangles one and shoots the other, all before you can even blink. The remaining assassins unleash machine gun fire, but Sakamoto dodges effortlessly, picking them off one by one until only one terrified man is left. Naturally, Sakamoto finishes him with a single, precise shot. Classic Sakamoto. But then, everything changes. Tired of the endless violence, Sakamoto decides to leave his killer ways behind. He falls in love with a beautiful woman he meets while shopping, marries her, and becomes a family man. He even opens a little shop and dedicates himself to a peaceful life with his wife and child. One day, Shin, an old associate from Sakamoto's assassin days, shows up at the shop, shocked to see the once unstoppable killer now running errands and dealing with school kids. As Shin watches, a young boy accidentally spills ink on a customer's clothes, triggering the man's rage. Sakamoto stays calm, even imagining for a moment how he could neutralize the guy with a pen. Instead, he steps in peacefully, diffusing the situation. The man insults Sakamoto's weight before storming off, but Sakamoto doesn't flinch. The boy, overwhelmed, thanks him through tears, and Sakamoto's wife and daughter comfort the kid. Shin is both impressed and confused, especially when Sakamoto serves him a meal like they're old pals catching up. Shin presses him about his past, questioning if he's truly left his violent life behind. He even comments on Sakamoto's weight gain, urging him to reclaim his former glory. But Sakamoto simply shrugs it off, making it clear he's done with that life. The day takes a turn when a man on a bicycle asks Sakamoto for help pruning an overgrown tree. With ninja-like speed and precision, Sakamoto trims the branches, leaving Shin stunned. Shortly after, Sakamoto effortlessly resolves other mundane issues, feeding a picky child, calming down kids fighting over a ball by literally cutting it in half. Shin's frustration grows. He accuses Sakamoto of hiding his true nature behind all this kindness, calling him disgraceful. But Sakamoto remains unbothered. Before Shin leaves, a small child playfully throws a toy arrow at him and runs off laughing. Annoyed but defeated, Shin realizes Sakamoto's transformation might be real after all. But is the peaceful shopkeeper act enough to keep his dangerous past at bay? Shin, sitting in his car and reflecting on how much Sakamoto has changed in the past 5 years. He notes that Sakamoto has packed on some serious pounds but is still as fast as ever. Deep down, Shin secretly wishes they could team up again. This bizarre mix of frustration and nostalgia leads him to repeatedly slam his head on the dashboard, shaking the whole car and scaring off nearby pedestrians. Suddenly, Shin gets a call from his boss. "Did you get Sakamoto back on board?" the boss demands. When Shin admits he failed, the boss coldly asks, "Then did you kill him?" Shin tries to explain that Sakamoto is just a chubby shopkeeper now and no threat to anyone. But the boss isn't buying it. "In this business, retirement equals elimination," he growls, warning Shin that if he doesn't handle Sakamoto, someone else will, and Shin might end up dead too. That night, Shin lies in bed, haunted by the boss's ultimatum. Memories of his and Sakamoto's past as partners flash through his mind. Clutching his weapon, Shin decides to confront Sakamoto directly. The next day, Shin visits Sakamoto's shop, pretending he's just there to say goodbye before leaving the country. But in the middle of their chat, Shin suddenly draws his gun and fires. To his absolute shock, Sakamoto deflects the bullet with a piece of hard candy he spits out like a pro. Before Shin can process what's happening, Sakamoto disappears into thin air. Shin scrambles to locate him, but Sakamoto isn't playing fair. He tosses chocolates as makeshift projectiles, launching them at Shin with the speed and precision of actual bullets. Shin dodges skillfully, but before he can regain his balance, Sakamoto switches to throwing pastries to further throw off his aim. Is this a fight or a dessert buffet? Just as Shin tries to reassess, Sakamoto reappears behind him and knocks him out with a powerful blow. As Shin fades into unconsciousness, he glimpses the old Sakamoto. Strong, commanding, and terrifying. Shin wakes up in Sakamoto's home, groggy and confused. Sakamoto's daughter notices him and alerts her mom. Sakamoto's wife is busy preparing a feast and asks Shin how much rice he wants. Wary of poison, Shin plays it safe with a modest portion. But one bite changes everything. "This is the best food I've ever tasted," he exclaims, completely blown away. Sakamoto's wife laughs, saying his reaction reminds her of how Sakamoto used to be. Meanwhile, Sakamoto quietly feeds his daughter, radiating peace and happiness. Watching this serene scene, Shin realizes how much Sakamoto has changed and how happy he's become. As Shin prepares to leave, Sakamoto walks him to the door. Embarrassed, Shin thanks him for the meal, and Sakamoto gestures to a sign that reads, "We hope to see you again." Back at the gang's hideout, Shin faces his furious boss. "Did you kill him?" the boss demands. Shin's silence sends the boss into a rage. Despite the ridicule from other gang members, Shin pleads for Sakamoto to be left alone, explaining that he's changed and has a family now. Desperate, Shin even offers to sacrifice himself to save Sakamoto. But the boss, cold and calculating, mocks Shin's loyalty. "If you want to protect him, then kill yourself." Shin, using his mind-reading ability, realizes the boss never intended to spare Sakamoto. Enraged, Shin exposes the boss's deceit, only for the boss to retaliate by ordering his men to kill Shin. Gunfire erupts, forcing Shin to flee for his life. Unbeknownst to everyone, Sakamoto has been listening in through a hidden device. Back at his shop, the once-retired assassin transforms his quiet store into a makeshift armory. Selecting a gun, Sakamoto prepares for what's to come. Shin faces off against the gang. Using his psychic abilities and sharp reflexes, he quickly eliminates 4 members. One thug tries to ambush him, but Shin, reading his thoughts, dodges the attack and delivers a brutal kick to the neck, knocking the guy out cold. Another gang member with a heavy weapon steps up, but Shin skillfully avoids him too thanks to his mind-reading skill. The gang boss, frustrated by his crew's incompetence, orders them to surround Shin and attack from a distance to avoid detection. With his escape routes cut off and only 1 magazine of bullets left, Shin takes down 2 more attackers before a bullet strikes his leg, immobilizing him. Just as the gang closes in, ready to finish him off, Sakamoto shows up, stealing the show in spectacular fashion. Armed with nothing but chopsticks, Sakamoto dismantles the gang with ease. He catches bullets mid-air, takes out attackers with flying kicks, and even uses pins as deadly projectiles, deflecting machine gun fire before knocking out the shooters. In one incredible move, Sakamoto ties up 2 gang members with a rope and sends them flying like bowling pins. Meanwhile, Shin just watches, dumbfounded by Sakamoto's absurd but effective techniques. The gang leader, desperate, orders his men to open fire on Sakamoto. But Sakamoto, moving at lightning speed, dodges bullets like they're nothing, disarming and incapacitating every attacker. When it's all over, Sakamoto casually picks up Shin's gun and reveals a listening device he had planted earlier, explaining how he found him. Shin, impressed, but also a little annoyed, admits Sakamoto is always 1 step ahead. Without skipping a beat, Sakamoto tosses Shin a work shirt and informs him, "You're working at the shop now." The next scene cuts to the shop where Sakamoto and Shin are in matching uniforms. Shin grumbles about Sakamoto eating noodles near him, pointing out there's barely any food left because of him. "Can't you save some for later?" he complains. Sakamoto's wife and daughter arrive, brightening the scene. The little girl runs to Shin and hugs him excitedly, already treating him like family. Later, Shin shows surprising patience as he helps an elderly woman find items and even promises a young boy he'll play with him once he's done working. When the boy asks if Shin likes his new job, Shin hesitates but admits it's better than the old one. When asked about his previous work, Shin nervously claims he was a cleaner. Catching Sakamoto's silent glare, a clear warning to keep the truth hidden. While restocking shelves, Shin can't help but bring up Sakamoto's recent fight, praising his combat skills despite his weight gain. "Seriously, how are you still that good?" Sakamoto, annoyed, tells Shin to focus on work. The conversation takes a turn when Sakamoto's wife overhears. She directly asks him if he's gone back to fighting, reminding him of their marriage rule: if you fight again, it's over. Sakamoto quickly denies it, reassuring her he's committed to their peaceful life. Curious, Shin tries to pry, asking what the marriage rule is exactly. Sakamoto, clearly done with Shin's questions, imagines all the ways he could shut him up. Shin suddenly feels a sharp pain and yells, accusing Sakamoto of causing it. "Stop messing with me," he shouts. Sakamoto smirks and tells him to be quiet. Later, the duo heads to Chinatown, where Shin marvels at the vibrant streets and colorful stalls. Noticing Sakamoto buying pork, Shin assumes it's for the shop. Sakamoto explained that the pork he bought was for his wife and daughter. Shin commented on how much Sakamoto cared for his family and asked again about the marriage rule. Sakamoto ignored the question and kept walking. While they were in Chinatown, a young girl named Lu crashed through a window and fell from a building, landing directly on Sakamoto and spilling the bag of meat he had just bought. Sakamoto stared at the mess, clearly irritated. Shin tried to reassure him, saying they could clean the meat, but Sakamoto dismissed the idea, calling it ruined. Before they could leave, a group of men chasing Lu appeared. Despite her small size, Lu prepared to face them confidently. Shin suggested they leave to avoid getting involved, but Sakamoto, still annoyed about the spilled pork, refused. "They ruined my daughter's dinner," he said. One of the men mocked Lu, comparing her to a cat that liked jumping out of windows. Lu stood her ground and called them puppets. Two of the men charged at her, but she kicked one to the ground and overpowered the other. Three more surrounded her, but she leapt over one, struck another from behind, and threw the third into a dumpster. A large man grabbed Lu from behind, pinning her arms. Another man approached with a knife and threatened to stab her, but one of his allies suggested torturing her instead. Smiling maliciously, the man with the knife said they should cut her legs so she couldn't run anymore. Just as he raised the blade, Sakamoto stepped in, snapping the knife in half with a utensil. Shin swung his bag at the man holding Lu, forcing him to release her. Sakamoto followed with a punch that knocked him down. Another gang member pulled a gun, but Lu quickly disarmed him and sent him sprawling with a kick. Shin, watching the fight, wondered who this girl was. Meanwhile, Sakamoto stared at the spilled pork, still upset about losing. The gang launched another attack, but Sakamoto picked up Lu and ran, dodging bullets as he moved. The gang struggled to keep up and eventually gave up, exhausted. At the gang's hideout, their leader Dan scolded his men for failing to capture Lu, reminding them that an entire clan had been wiped out for her. As one of the men left in disgrace, Beto, the gang swordsman, decapitated him without warning. Holding the head, he mocked the dead man, pretending to listen to his complaints. The gruesome act left everyone silent. Beto's brother stepped forward and scolded him for making jokes about such a serious situation. Dan then addressed both brothers, explaining that Lu carried a key that was vital for controlling the black market. He ordered them to retrieve her at any cost. Beto confidently stated that anyone who stood in their way would be killed. Meanwhile, Sakamoto, Shin, and Lu kept running, moving through alleyways and rooftops. Shin asked why Lu was being chased, and she explained that she was the daughter of a mafia boss. The men after her wanted the key she carried, a small, intricately designed piece of metal hanging around her neck. Shin suggested she hand over the key, but Lu refused. She explained that it unlocked a vault containing her family's treasures, which her parents had entrusted her to protect. Memories of her mother tying the key around her neck and her father fighting off waves of enemies to buy her time filled her mind. She vowed never to give it up, saying she owed it to her parents' sacrifices. Apologizing for the trouble, Lu tried to leave to avoid dragging them further into her problems. Shin moved to follow her, but Sakamoto stopped him. Turning to Lu, he asked if she knew how to cook pork. Surprised, Lu said she did, having learned from her father. Sakamoto then announced that they would help her. He made a deal, promising to handle the gang in exchange for a meal. Shin tried to object, but before he could say anything, his psychic ability detected danger. Beto appeared out of nowhere, landing a powerful kick on Sakamoto that sent him staggering. The gang quickly surrounded Sakamoto in a nearby building. Shin's concern grew as he realized the seriousness of the situation. Sun mocked Bato's weak strikes, suggesting he'd lost his edge. Bato, unbothered, shrugged off the insult, saying he didn't care about technique. He just enjoyed killing and cleaning up afterward. Sun retorted that even Bato's killing skills were getting sloppy. Confused, Shin asked who these guys were. Lu explained that Sun and Bato were notorious assassins, feared for their efficiency and twisted habits. They didn't just kill, they drew portraits of their victims afterward, adding a sickening touch to their infamy. They took pride in their work and relished every contract, no matter how dark. Bato joked that their reputation wasn't so bad, but Sun argued that assassins should avoid drawing attention. Before their debate could continue, Shin launched an attack on Sun, aiming for a clean strike. Sun blocked effortlessly and mocked Shin, teasing him about Sakamoto's supposed death. Shin, undeterred, confidently declared, "Sakamoto can't be beaten. You don't know his true strength." Sun dismissed Shin's words as naive bravado. Meanwhile, Bato tried to sneak up on Lu with his sword raised for a surprise attack. Before he could strike, Sakamoto reappeared out of nowhere, delivering a devastating punch to Bato's face. The impact was so powerful that Bato crashed through the floor, leaving the entire room shaking. Watching this, Sun casually remarked on Sakamoto's strength, while Bato, sprawled in the rubble, muttered something about the building being too fragile. Turning his attention to Lu, Sun taunted her, demanding the key she carried. He promised to kill her gently if she handed it over. Lu, standing firm, declared the key was her inheritance from her father and that she would never part with it. Sun sneered, dismissing her words as foolish sentimentality. He mocked her for risking her life over a trivial key. Angered by his tone, Lu charged at Sun, but before she could reach him, Sakamoto stepped in and threw her back to stop her from acting recklessly. Furious, Lu glared at Sakamoto, but before she could argue, Shin stepped forward and reminded her to stay calm. "Don't let them provoke you," he said. Sun hurled a knife at her. Lu froze, shocked, unable to react. At the last second, Sakamoto intercepted the blade mid-air, saving her life. Sun sneered, mocking Sakamoto for interfering. "You should have let it hit her. She'd finally be reunited with her parents." Sakamoto remained calm, replying firmly. Lu, shaken, asked why Sakamoto was so willing to help her. Sakamoto's mind flashed back to a memory from his past. He remembered coming home late one night with a gift for his wife. She greeted him with a disapproving look and asked why he was late. When she realized his work meant more killing, she refused the gift, calling it tainted with blood. Overwhelmed by guilt, Sakamoto watched in horror as she moved toward the edge of the building, suggesting they end their relationship. Panicked, he threw the gift aside and ran after her. They fell together into a snowbank, and she admitted she had misjudged the height of the building. She told Sakamoto that someday he would understand the pain of losing someone he loved, and urged him to stop fighting and use his skills to help others instead. Back in the present, Sakamoto turned to Shin and quietly said, "That's my rule. I don't kill." The brothers Sun and Bato launched a coordinated attack. Bato targeted Sakamoto with a series of strikes, but Sakamoto dodged every blow with ease. Sun followed up with precise weapon strikes, but Sakamoto blocked them effortlessly. Meanwhile, Bato turned his focus to Shin, trying to land a hit, but Shin dodged and countered with a kick that barely fazed him. Frustrated, Sun threw another set of knives, but Sakamoto caught them mid-air without breaking a sweat. The brothers regrouped and exchanged a glance, silently agreeing on their next move. They launched a flurry of synchronized strikes, aiming to overwhelm Sakamoto with their speed. But even together, they couldn't land a single hit. Shin approached Sakamoto, asking if he was okay. Sakamoto told Shin he was fine, just feeling a bit stiff. Shin slapped a patch on him to help, saying it should do the trick. Sun, annoyed and confused, asked Bato how Sakamoto dodged everything without getting hit. Sun asked if Bato had a plan, and Bato nodded. The two attacked again, but this time, Sakamoto ended it fast. He knocked Bato out cold with a strong punch to the head, slamming him into the ground. Sun, shocked, tried one last attack. Sakamoto easily broke Sun's weapon and left him in disbelief. Out of options, Sun turned his attention to Lu, hoping to grab her. Shin threw a rope around Sun's neck, pulling him down before he could act. Before Sun could stand back up, Sakamoto dropped a refrigerator on him, ending the fight. Lu, staring at Sakamoto in disbelief, asked, "Who are you?" Sakamoto, as calm as always, replied, "Just a shop worker," and took a bite of crab. Meanwhile, Dan, the gang boss, was in his office hitting the vault in frustration, unable to open it. He was interrupted when Bato and Sun were dragged in, tied up and beaten. Shocked at their condition, Dan demanded to know who had done this. Before he could say more, Lu appeared, pressing a knife to his throat. Dan froze, begging for mercy. Lu told him to shut up, saying nothing he did could bring her father back. She then attacked him, landing punch after punch until Dan collapsed. Shin, watching, asked if she felt better and joked about wanting to hit him too. Sakamoto, clearly annoyed, stared at Shin, who quickly told him to stop glaring. After calming down, Lu remembered her father's advice. Don't let anger control you. Build a happy life instead. She focused on the vault and unlocked it with her key. Inside was a huge pile of treasure. Shin, unable to resist, grabbed a book and started reading. Sakamoto looked through the jewels but didn't seem too impressed. Lu found a small container with a letter inside. Opening it, she read her father's final message. Shin asked what it said, and Lu explained her father had written about the best drink he ever had and how grateful he was. Shin laughed and joked, "I hope that drink was worth all this trouble." The group sat on the floor and ate a meal of pork together. Lu thought about all the chaos they'd been through and said it felt like so much had been destroyed. Shin teased her, saying it was all her fault anyway. Sakamoto tasted the pork and said, "It's still good." Lu tried it and agreed, saying, "It's amazing." At the convenience store, Sakamoto is dealing with a severe headache. Just then, Lu enters and announces that she is joining the store as a staff member. Shin, surprised, questions why someone as wealthy as her would take this job. She explained that she wanted to protect her family's treasure and mentioned that Sakamoto offered her the position, which is why she accepted. Shin then reflects on how deeply he was moved after learning the reason why Sakamoto chooses not to kill. When Sakamoto inquires how he found out, Shin explains that he read Sakamoto's thoughts during a fight and discovered his reasoning. In response, Sakamoto gives Shin a family rulebook, stating that since he is now part of the family, he must follow its rules. Shin is overjoyed, but upon opening the notebook, he finds that it contains only one rule: do not kill anyone. Sakamoto warns Shin about the consequences of breaking this rule. Shin, however, points out the contradiction in the warning itself, as it would go against the rule. The scene then shifts to a mysterious building where several individuals are holding a meeting. They possess detailed information about both Sakamoto and Shin and are discussing the 1 billion yen bounty placed on Sakamoto's head. The next day, Lu arrived at the convenience store 2 hours late, completely unfazed. Shin, frustrated, scolded her for being so careless, but Lu didn't seem to care. She brushed it off as if being punctual didn't matter. As the shift continued, Shin noticed something unusual. Detergent bottles were sitting on the juice counter. Annoyed, he confronted Lu and demanded she take her job seriously. Instead of fixing the issue, Lu made it worse by shoving everything into one corner in a disorganized mess. Frustrated, Shin questioned if she had ever held a proper job before. Lu casually mentioned that she once worked for her father, digging holes and burying sacks, leaving Shin more confused than before. Shin, now completely fed up, vented to Sakamoto about firing Lu, claiming she was turning the store into chaos. To Shin's surprise, Sakamoto, who rarely speaks, suddenly started talking. He didn't just say a few words. He gave a long, detailed response. Sakamoto defended Lu and even asked her to apologize for her mistakes. Shin and Lu were so shocked by Sakamoto's sudden outburst that they couldn't believe their eyes or ears. Things took an even stranger turn when Sakamoto, mid-conversation, threatened Shin, claiming he was rude and needed to be dealt with. Shin was left panicking, unsure how to respond, as this behavior didn't match the Sakamoto he knew. The situation became even more bizarre when another Sakamoto walked into the store. The new arrival silently took a seat. behaving as though nothing unusual was happening. The first Sakamoto smirked at the sight of his apparent double and, without warning, stabbed a knife through the newspaper he was holding. The seated Sakamoto dodged the attack with ease, showing no sign of concern. Tensions rose as the seated Sakamoto drew his own knife, while the first one escalated the standoff by pulling out a gun. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Finally, the seated Sakamoto spoke, addressing the imposter calmly and calling him Nagumo. The imposter dropped his disguise, revealing his true identity, and grinned. He admitted he was testing Sakamoto's skills and was impressed to see they were still sharp. Meanwhile, Shin stood frozen, struggling to process what had just happened. He couldn't understand how Sakamoto had managed to change his face so quickly, or why he couldn't read Nagumo's thoughts. Nagumo found their shocked reactions hilarious and couldn't stop laughing. Annoyed, they both decided to teach him a lesson by beating him up. Once that was done, they turned their attention to the new man and started questioning him about his identity. The man introduced himself as a friend of Sakamoto who worked at a nearby convenience store. He claimed to be 18 years old, which surprised them because he looked much older. Sakamoto then revealed the truth, explaining that the man was actually a hitman who had started working alongside him years ago and was 27 years old. Hearing this, they were shocked again. They tied him to a chair and gave him another beating. The man then revealed some alarming information about a 1 million yen bounty placed on Sakamoto's head. He explained that the JAA had officially announced the bounty recently, and many assassins were likely already aware and preparing to come after Sakamoto. As they were processing the news, a pizza delivery man arrived. Shin read the man's mind and discovered that he was another assassin targeting Sakamoto. The assassin acted confidently and quickly took Nagumo hostage. Sakamoto remained calm and completely unfazed by the situation, as though it wasn't worth his attention. Nagumo, however, acted swiftly. Despite being held hostage, he managed to overpower the assassin, get behind him, and start choking him. Before the assassin could be killed, Sakamoto intervened and stopped Nagumo, instructing him not to kill. Frustrated but compliant, Nagumo released the assassin and questioned Sakamoto's plan for handling the situation without violence, given that more enemies were undoubtedly on their way. The atmosphere became tense, but Nagumo broke it by joking about the situation. He then dragged the restrained assassin out of the room, giving him a warning about sending more attackers. Elsewhere, several people were watching the entire incident through a hidden camera. They began discussing their next move after the failure of their first attempt with the pizza assassin. One of them suggested using strategy to defeat Sakamoto by carefully planning the time, place, and other factors. Some in the group dismissed the idea, remaining overconfident due to Sakamoto's retirement 5 years earlier and assuming he wouldn't be much of a threat. Back in the room, Sakamoto looked directly at the hidden camera and delivered a chilling message, making it clear he was aware of their surveillance. The watchers were shocked by how easily he had detected the camera. Later, Shin and Sakamoto sat together, reflecting on the situation. Shin expressed concern about more assassins targeting them, like the pizza man. Sakamoto explained that they needed to keep a low profile for now, as they didn't yet know who their true enemy was. At that moment, Hana enters, full of excitement and happiness as she looks forward to their visit to the amusement park the next day. Sakamoto, however, feels uneasy about the idea, seeing it as a risky move given the situation. The scene shifts to the next day. Hana and Ai are thrilled, but the rest of the group appears tense and uneasy. They start riding the swings, and Sakamoto begins to feel sick from overeating. Meanwhile, Hana talks about how they came to see Sugar Bunny, who is known for his strength. While Sakamoto's family enjoys the trip, Sakamoto and Shin remain focused on the potential danger. Shin identifies their two main priorities, stopping any threats and ensuring that Sakamoto can spend quality time with his family. Lu questions how they can identify their enemies. Shin explains his ability to read the thoughts of people within a 30-meter radius. This revelation frustrates Lu, as she assumes her thoughts must have been read as well. Shin suddenly detects something unusual and warns Sakamoto about an enemy hiding nearby, disguised as a worker. Lu steps in to distract Sakamoto's family, creating an opening. Sakamoto takes advantage of this moment to confront the worker and neutralize him with a precise stab to the chest using a pin. The attack is calculated, avoiding any vital organs or arteries, ensuring the man is incapacitated but not killed. Lu observes Sakamoto's incredible precision and skill, noting how he managed to disable the enemy without even looking directly at him. Shin acknowledges this as just a glimpse of Sakamoto's abilities. Meanwhile, another assassin is shown observing them closely. This individual has detailed information about both Sakamoto and Shin, and begins strategizing ways to counter Shin's ability to read thoughts. The assassin devises a plan to avoid thinking altogether, effectively blocking Shin's ability to detect him. Using this strategy, the assassin walks past Shin without being noticed, successfully evading detection. The group is shown riding a roller coaster. Lu notices a man and points out that he looks suspicious. While Shin tells her not to judge too quickly, the man starts to worry if he has been noticed and wonders if he unintentionally gave himself away. Shin quickly realizes that the man is also targeting Sakamoto and alerts. The man pulls out a gun and fires at Sakamoto, but the bullet is deflected by Sakamoto's glasses, which turn out to be bulletproof. Shocked by this, the man hesitates. Shin takes the opportunity to unlock his safety bar, leap into the air, and land directly on the man. He unbuckles the man's safety belt and pulls him off the roller coaster. Both land on the track. Although Shin is ready to fight, the man stands completely still, which confuses him. Shin also finds himself unable to read the man's mind, adding to his uncertainty. As Shin notices the roller coaster approaching, he jumps out of the way just in time. While he is mid-air, the man attacks him with a knife. Shin manages to dodge the first strike but is cut by the second. The knife is coated with poison, which starts to affect Shin's balance and vision. The man remains confident, believing Shin will soon lose the fight. Despite his condition, Shin stays determined. The man tries to explain how he sees fear in Sakamoto, which makes him weak. Shin focuses on his determination, brushing off the man's words, and remains focused on protecting Sakamoto and his family. As the roller coaster loops back, Shin takes another jump, grabs the man, and slams him into the roller coaster. He attempts to finish the fight, but the man blocks his punch and counters with another knife attack. Shin manages to block the attack, but struggles as his vision deteriorates. Drawing strength from thoughts of Hana, Shin regains his focus, grabs the man, and jumps off the track with him. Meanwhile, a scene on a nearby stage shows Sugar Bunny fighting a villain while children enjoy the performance. Suddenly, Shin and the man crash onto the stage. Without hesitation, Shin puts on the Sugar Bunny costume and resumes the fight. The man attacks with his knife, but Shin dodges the strikes and lands a strong punch, shocking the man. The man is confused by how Shin, despite his impaired vision, is dodging so effectively. The man tries to counterattack again, but Shin overpowers him with a series of strikes. Hana and I, watching the stage, are thrilled because Sakamoto appears to be enjoying the show. However, they are unaware that Sakamoto is secretly guiding Shin, providing instructions on how to handle the fight. Following Sakamoto's guidance, Shin gains the upper hand. Sakamoto signals Shin to end the fight, and Shin knocks the man out, securing his victory. The children cheer loudly, enjoying the thrilling conclusion. That's it for this episode. Thanks for watching my recap. See you in the next video.